Hi, love. You're muted there still.
Yeah.
There we
Can you hear
go.
me now?
Yes, thanks.
Hi, I'm from Mumbai, India, and I think it's the second time I'm attending your meeting.
I've
So
been to Mumbai. I've been there. Yes, wonderful. Yeah,
uh,
glad you're here.
thank you. I've been listening to your talks and just wanted to ask you a question similar to the first one in the same thread. I've been going to Tiruvannamalai for some years now, and Ramana's teachings, which is, like doing the active inquiry, the who am I, like every thought that comes up, not to pursue any thought, to like bring it back to source of the knower, and that any desire that you have should be looked at and taken. The whole process of not letting a single desire be there,
Mhm.
finishing it all completely, every vasana, every sanskara, every, like you could say, embedded thought patterns that we keep repeating. So that kind of my question is that how do you kind of deal? I mean, what is your teaching on this? Because what you're talking about is that effortless being, which is always there. But does one also get into this active, so-called, process of efforting and taking every desire and cutting it to its root, bringing it back to its root.
Yeah. It's um it's a combination really, these teachings between recognizing who we already are in our meditation and our self-inquiry. And then with our contemplation, we're then beginning to undo these samskaras. But we're not examining every single thought because I just found that to be endless.
Yeah.
As soon as I transcended something, the mind is adding things underneath, right? And the list is
Yeah,
getting
yeah, yeah.
longer. Instead, we deal with it by category. So, any emotion that we're feeling is coming from a belief that we haven't seen is untrue. So, for example, fear points to some really unconscious idea that I'm not safe. I believe that idea so much as a separate, apparent separate being that I'm not safe. And I experience fear, and then I'll experience this I'm not safe, and the fear and all the ways it's playing in my life. Not enough money, health,
Yeah, yeah,
energy,
yeah.
sleep, whatever. Um, and so we use the emotion to find the belief, and then we question, is that really true? Is it really true I'm not safe? Because if instead we just look at the conscious thoughts we're having in the mind, these conscious thoughts are coming from the emotion, which is coming from this unconscious thought. And the mind is trying to explain why we're not safe in this example. So I found it much easier in the end to actually go to the root of it, which is this idea that there are three big ideas that I had to look at. Um, the idea that I'm not safe, that I'm not good enough, and that I'm limited, I can't get what I want. And once those had been really looked at, all of the vasanas, all of the samskaras were branches on these three big branches coming from the tree of a separate self. There were three big branches, and then all these little branches coming off. When I chopped off these three branches, I'm not safe, I'm not good enough, and I can't get what I want. There was only this sense of being separate then that was left. And actually, that begins to crumble as well because most of the sense of a separate self is just built on all the problems it thinks it has, right? That are
Yeah,
endless.
absolutely. Yeah.
I found it, Ramana's teaching is beautiful, but I found I needed something that I could do to work on these vasanas. And as we seeing who we are and also seeing who we're not with contemplation, it's like rowing a boat with two oars. For I was only only doing meditation and inquiry. I was just going around in circles, rowing one arm.
Mm,
And all this stuff was coming up to look at, this old thought stuff. And it was just endless, like we said. I began to realize I was missing something. I have to have a way to look at and just take my energy away from my investment in this idea I'm not safe. And I realized that by asking a question, I can challenge it. I can either believe I'm not safe, or I can ask if it's really true I'm not safe. I can't do both at the same time.
mm,
Question automatically brings us back eventually to that which is always here and effortlessly safe, could never be unsafe. These desires are really very simple if we look at what desires we have: to feel loved, to feel safe, to feel free. Maybe all of our desires are about that really underneath. So it's a kind of a combination. I did a lot of too much meditation and then no way to deal with what came up, and it really messed my body up.
yeah.
Did a lot of looking what needs to be looked at, but I was doing that as a parent separate being, so it was going on forever.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
So I kind of found this balance, this um, way of rowing with two oars.
Yeah, I think that's true. It cuts through it then, it just cuts you and it brings you back to who you are. But
Yeah.
what about relationships? Like some of the people you naturally dislike or whatever, the past. So how would you deal with something like that? Would you again bring that up and say, is it true that I'm separate from this being? Or, is it true that there's somebody else?
Yeah, we
Would
can
you
ask
do
that
that?
kind of question in our inquiry. Are there really any other separate beings? Or if there's a strong emotion around it, we might ask emotionally first. So the relationship problem is a symptom of the emotion, which is a symptom of the belief. So as we challenge the belief by tracking back, what is this emotion telling me? So if there's intense anger, I think it's at someone, but really it's coming from something much more fundamental inside. And this relationship can't heal while I'm still holding on to this idea. So we do the contemplation on it, what's underneath anger. It's got to change both body minds in the relationship because I'm not a separate person doing the
Mhm.
contemplation, right? It's
Right.
the infinite self doing it or not doing it.
Mhm.
So I found that pretty much every problem I ever had, it began to resolve itself. Um, because before that, I was insisting you should change to make me happy or feel
It's true.
safer, or
Yeah.
you should make me feel loved.
Mm.
And it wasn't working out so well for me.
Not for anybody, I guess.
Say again, sorry.
Yeah, I said not for anybody. It doesn't work out for anybody,
Yeah.
right?
And I actually had this astounding realization that this other person cannot change. If I will not change the filter through which I'm looking at this experience, I can't get what I want. If I put those spectacles on, then all I can see is that, me not getting what I want. All I can experience is that over and over and over, infinitely, in an infinite number of ways. And that other
Mm.
person must also have that belief inside. So how could it ever resolve? And it's this amazing, like, how has any human relationship ever worked at all with us all believing these thoughts?
Mm.
Anyway, I'm digressing now, but
No, it's interesting because in a way it's like shadow work a bit, right? You have to every time examine your false beliefs and the
Mhm.
lies that it carries
it,
and
it
bring it
gets
back.
quicker and quicker because the more you see this belief isn't true, and I've only been experiencing the belief. I'm not actually unworthy. I've just been experiencing this thought that I'm unworthy. Then you've got all that life force back you've invested in trying to make yourself better somehow. Even awakening, right? We come to awakening as a self-improvement project at first. Awakening will fix everything. Um, and then you start to see the more life force you get back from the thoughts, it's more obvious who you really are. So you go to the next belief, but even more certain of who you really are, and it's even more clear that's never been true. And eventually it's just like, oh, that's not true. That's not true. That was never true. That's never true. Before we're doing this work before as a separate being who's feels powerless anyway, right? I've
Mhm.
got to go through all of these thoughts and beliefs, and it's never going to get done. And why aren't I any good at this? You know, and it spirals round upon itself into some self-hatred or shame or something.
Yeah. Another challenge I've been having is that I find it intense sometimes, to always be aware of the awareness. And then I find myself escaping into Facebook and social media, like the
No,
escape, the escape, the food escape, the television escape.
food, television, alcohol for me, eBay, and at one point on my iPad, I had about four different card games, a
Yeah,
jigsaw puzzle
exactly.
game, and I was just constantly avoiding what is.
So then you beat yourself up and you say, "Oh God, I couldn't even do the most simplest of just being aware, of my awareness, the simplest thing, and I'm not able to do it."
I noticed something, which is I was sitting on the sofa here watching the TV, avoiding meditating, and I realized I'm aware of what's my eyes are seeing on the TV. Later,
Yeah,
it's like I noticed that when I was playing a card game, which I was addicted to at the time, the solitaire on my iPad, I was aware of the screen and the cards and the hand pressing, it's like
yeah.
I actually can't get away from meditation. So I did my Netflix meditation for a while, you know. It
That's a popular one.
it worked for me. It's just notice that you're noticing, right? You're watching the story on the screen and you're noticing the screen as something that's watching. I'm experiencing, like we were this morning before,
Yeah,
I'm experiencing this program. It's literally, whatever doorway in is easiest. I know what's on the TV. I know what my mind's thinking about what's on the TV, even. We just
that's
don't
the
have to be
beauty.
so hard on ourselves, right?
Yeah, yeah. And that's the beauty. We can't really be away from this
Yeah.
that we already are. It's just that we think that we should be behaving a particular way to pay attention to it.
Yeah. And paradoxically, when we don't care if our meditation is Netflix or, Om Namah Shivaya, it's just kind of it tends to be more of this, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. You just notice that you're noticing all the time, all the time. This becomes clearer, right? Whatever I'm noticing is changing.
yeah,
Sometimes it's what's going on in my mind as I'm seated in meditation. Sometimes it's what's happening on the TV. Sometimes it's what another person is saying. But I'm always aware of whatever is moving and changing. And then it just kind of softens and it's a lot more fun.
yeah. I already feel so relieved listening to you.
Oh, good, 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 good.
It's
Yeah.
like a
If there's one
relaxation.
thing, I know I can't do anything different, but if there's one thing I wish I'd done differently on my journey, it would be to have more fun,
Mm.
not take myself so seriously.
Yes,
I was
all
a
of us.
legend in my own mind, the epic failure of me.
Well, I've been 30 years on this path of meditating and japa and seva. So it's just so kind of, you have to be doing, you have to do tapas, you have to do a lot. And, it has, that perfection standard, you're not good enough.
And if I
And so,
can't
yeah.
glow in the dark and levitate yet, I'm obviously not doing it right, right?
Yeah. And my light has to help other people.
Yeah. But your very effort to try is what's helping people.
Amazing.
Wonderful. Lots of love.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.